Today's episode is brought to you by Righteous Felon. If you're on the hunt for a delicious high-protein snack, look no further than Righteous Felon. This family-owned brand is all about premium pasture-raised Black Angus beef, hormone and antibiotic-free with mouth-watering flavors like OG hickory and 10 grams of protein per serving. You'll get the boost you need for all your adventures. Plus, they have keto-friendly and gluten-free options, and they support sustainability with the Conservation Alliance. Ready to snack smarter? Use promo code MINUTECAST. That's the promo code MINUTECAST for 15% off your order. Head on over to righteousfelon.com or follow the link in the show notes and grab your new favorite snack today.
Minicast Media.
10,000!
Hello and welcome in to this edition of the Nats Minicast, part of the Belief Podcast Network. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Believe in Nats. And the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe or follow the Nats Minicast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. Give it a 5-star rating, leave some comments, and tell your friends. I sure would appreciate it. So in this edition of the Nats Minicast, we talk about the emergence of Cade Cavalli and how he looks like a legit opening day starter after carving up the Astros. Is the Nationals' ace already decided? A bit later, why Cavalli's comeback from Tommy John surgery could completely change the Nationals' rotation in 2026. And then to close out the show, 2 roster battles that could define the season, first base and catcher. And yeah, the Nationals might still not know who's starting. All right, all of your Nats news in 15 minutes or less. Nationals baseball lives here. So let's get to it here. Cade Cavalli, he very well might be the Nationals opening day starter. And it's something I've spoke about on this podcast before, but it does seem even more apparent to me. And I know the Nationals haven't said it yet, but after his last start, it kind of feels obvious. And Cade Cavalli looked absolutely dominant against the Astros. 4 innings, 6 strikeouts, just 1 hit allowed. And maybe the most important stat, 0 walks. Let me say that one again, 0 walks. And now, for a power pitcher who is basically returning to full action after Tommy John surgery, that's a sign that everything is working. And in a lot of ways, not just working exactly the way the Nats hoped it would. His fastball is legit, 98.6 miles per hour. The average velo was 96.9 miles per hour. And the big development, of course, which I've spoke about on the show, is the new sweeper. Now, look, if you're a Nats fan, you've probably heard about this pitch all spring, but seeing him actually use it in a strikeout, that's when it becomes real. Cavalli struck out Cam Smith with it, and suddenly the pitch looks nasty. Fastball, sinker, curveball, sweeper. That's a 4-pitch arsenal that can get both righties and lefties out. And here's the other part of his outing that really stood out. When things got messy, Cavalli didn't panic. He kept that pulse rate low. Bases loaded. Error by C.J. Abrams. 2 bunt hits. And now he's staring down Jose Altuve, right? And that's a situation where young pitchers melt down. Instead, sinker inside. Double play. What? Then he gets Yordan Alvarez to pop out, damage limited. And that's ace-level composure. Now, the Nats manager Blake Butera said the team isn't ready to name him the opening day starter. I think they like to keep the competition open. But the schedule lines up Cavalli perfectly. Opening day is at Wrigley Field, and if Cavalli keeps pitching every 5 days, that's probably your starter. All right, next let's talk about Cavalli's comeback could transform the entire Nationals rotation. So here's the bigger picture. For me, this isn't just about one good start. This is about Cade Cavalli becoming healthy actually means for both the Nationals and himself. Because remember, this guy basically lost 3 years of development. He debuted in 2022, then his elbow went out, and suddenly his career stalled. Now, though, the stuff looks better than ever. Velocity is back. I'm going to say his command looks sharper, and the Nats are treating him like the centerpiece of the rotation. And honestly, right, they kind of need him to be, because this rebuild has been around young pitching. Now, if Cavalli becomes a frontline starter, everything else starts to make sense. The timelines line up, the young lineup matures, and suddenly, the Nats aren't just rebuilding, they're building toward contention. Now, the other part of this outing was how efficient he was. 51 pitches for 4 innings. Wow, right? That's exactly what you want from a pitcher ramping up. And then after the start, he threw another inning in the bullpen. This guy is full steam ahead. He is trying to take the bull by the horns and be that number one in the rotation. He threw another inning in the bullpen, which means he effectively worked 5 innings total. Now, that's a normal starter workload progression. So yeah, the Nats are being careful, but in a lot of ways, they're also clearly preparing him to be a full starter on opening day. And honestly, if he stays healthy, Cavalli might finally become the ace the Nationals envisioned when they drafted him. All right, so coming up here after the break, the Nationals still have 2 major lineup questions, first base and catcher. I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minicast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. All of your Nats news in 15 minutes or less. Nationals baseball lives here. So, while the pitching story looks promising, the lineup, there are some questions. I'm not going to lie. 2 positions popped to me in particular, first base and catcher. And these are not small decisions. Let's start at first, because after the departures of Nathaniel Lowe, Josh Bell, Paul DeJong, the Nats basically enter the spring without a clear starter. Multiple players are getting looks. Bimelec Ortiz, Andres Chaparro, Matt Mervis, Yohandy Morales. And yeah, that's a lot of names, but no clear answers. And here's the wild twist for me, because some projections are saying Luis Garcia Jr. could actually move to first base, which would be interesting, right? Because he's primarily a second baseman. So that's something to watch the rest of the spring. Now, the catcher battle. This one is a fascinating one because you've got Keibert Ruiz, who the Nationals took a big bite out of that apple when they signed him to that deal, but let's be honest, has never really lived up to expectation. So, like I said, Keibert Ruiz, technically the starter, but injuries limited him last season. The Nationals brought in Harry Ford, a top prospect, and if you don't know, he's pretty good. And Ford is also heading to play for Great Britain, which I typed this one up earlier. We already know some of that action happened. So his development is happening on 2 stages right now. Spring training and the international stage. And the early stats, not great for either catcher, but the competition itself might be the point because the Nats are trying to figure out their long-term core. Now, listen, I think that Harry Ford is the guy, right? And it's spring training. I think we know what we have in Keibert Ruiz, right? I mean, we've seen it last year, plus what he had that concussion issues. And just even before that, never was quite the player that we had hoped for. Flashes of greatness, right? There was even, rumblings at one point last year. Could Keibert Ruiz be a first baseman, right? But in any event, the catcher is a huge part of that. Spring training games don't always matter, but these roster battles do. They definitely do. Now, if Cade Cavalli keeps pitching like this, the Nationals might have their opening day starter. If his comeback holds up, they might also have their ace. And if the team can figure out first base and catcher, then suddenly the 2026 Nats start to look a whole lot more interesting. So some intriguing storylines to follow, right, Nats fans, as we edge closer and closer to the start of the season. That it's interesting that there's some websites that don't project the Nationals to be one of the best teams in the Major League Baseball or in the National League. but they also don't project them to be one of the worst. It is said that they are now trending in the right direction. But again, we've heard this before, right? That we're finally coming out of the rebuild, that this Nationals team is for real. I understand all of that, but I am trying to look at this optimistically and understand what it is. When you start building a deck, you don't open the door and see a deck built. You understand that you need to have a footing. You need to put up supports. You need to have a frame. That kind of thing. I think that's where the Nationals are now. They're not looking in the backyard and seeing just a bare space with a pile of lumber. They're starting to see pieces get put together. Now, this deck, this team, if you will, can get fast-tracked if some of these players perform better than we had hoped, because let's be honest, I highlighted catcher and first baseman, but there's also a lot of questions about the outfield as well. Now, I think it's a safe assumption to say James Wood has it locked down, but we need to see more from Dylan Cruz, and I know battling injuries, and Jake Young, and all those kind of things, and Robert Hassel, who is Mr. Spring Training, but not necessarily in the regular season. That, it's projections. It's all of those things. It's kind of looking in your crystal ball to say where this team is going. What I am saying is I don't think they're as bad as maybe initially thought, but I'm also not, anointing them as being, a team that's going to vie for winning the East, anything like that. But steps in the right direction. Again, I think that once it fully materializes and we see these players on the field in regular season games, and let's get into a month or so, then I think we can accurately kind of project the trajectory of the 2026 Nats. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. All your Nats news in 15 minutes or less. Nationals baseball lives here, and I'll talk to you again next time.